Right, back with you tonight on In Focus. Archbishop Thabo Makgoba's term as president of the South African Council of Churches has come to an end after 3 years at the helm. Speaking at this year's Triennial National Conference, Reverend Makgoba said the council should support the launch of a new Palestinian support movement, which will also target those who provide weapons to those who are participating in the Middle East conflict. The Archbishop joins us now for more on the conversation, particularly around his tenure as president of the South African Council of Churches. Your Grace, good evening. Thank you very much for your time and joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Thabo, and thanks for having me on your show.
We are having this conversation and you're doing this transition, as you're saying, getting ready, readying yourself even for retirement from your own church at this particular point. But the nation is facing unprecedented corruption, and to put it lightly. There is worrying tendency of violence. I mean, in the Eastern Cape, you look at, they were even reporting tonight of another 5 family members that have been brutally murdered. Of course, there is growing poverty. Having been in office for 3 years in the Council of Churches, looking at this scenario, what are the reasons, do you think, that are bringing us to the scenario that we are seeing now?
Thank you very much, Thabo. Perhaps let me first start by wishing the matriculants well as they write their exams under the litany of ills and challenges in various contexts of our country, including the scenario that we have painted. You're right, Thabo. The percentage of the youth that are unemployed is just too high. It makes our business in the church and the faith community, the business of giving hope to the nation, very tough because the youth have worked hard, they write matric and they study for matric and they pass. Some of them, by God's grace and hard work, go to universities and colleges and they pass their degrees only to become unemployed. So unemployment is one of the worst factor that creates desperation or some of our souls to be homeless. And some of the degrees, of course, that they study for are not what the market want, but one shouldn't make our children study in order to be enslaved, because that's what the market wants. The market and so the universities must give our children critical skills that they can apply everywhere. And you're right, then the corruption is lacerating the very fabric of our society. I mean, if you steal money, if you cut corners, are you stealing from the poorest of the poor? And now that leads to crime, and some actually steal with impunity. And if they do that, then we go into a situation where now some extort and some now wants to make themselves protectors of businesses and homes, and then the whole system collapses. And it's worse. I need to be careful here. I'm not generalizing that the police are involved, but when the police are also fingered in the corruption, it really hits the core of our work in giving the country hope. So there are layers and layers, Thabo, that create hopelessness, and there are layers and layers that make our country, after 30 years, as if we haven't touched the ideals that we've put on paper. And maybe economic transformation might be one of the tools that we could just zoom in
Yes.
Because at the moment, children of those that have inherited wealth continue to have wealth, and children of parents that are born into poverty continue to inherit poverty. And now this inequality is unsustainable.
To borrow a little bit from your address then, what truth, if any, do we need to accept, and what truth is going to set us free? For example, education in the country. Is it broken? What will it take for it to be inclusive? What will it take for it to be equitable for all?
Thabo, indeed, the truth that we need to face is, through one of the NGO and trust that supports my public ministry, it pains me to see that even after 30 years, when various presidents have said they will do away with pit latrines and long drop toilets in schools, and we've got the best policy on school infrastructure and development, but we still have long drop toilets, and in the past, people fell in those toilets, and some died. So that is the truth that we need to face as South Africans. But in this development trust that I had, we've said we can complain and highlight the challenge until we lose hope and we are despairing. So we've targeted, for example, few corporates and said, you know what, we don't want your money. You've got engineers, you've got the know-how, and with the previous Minister of Basic Education, we said, we know that this is within your realm. We're not interfering, but can you give us a permission that we could target a few schools and get these corporates to build, the toilets? School sanitation is a basic human right. So we went down in Limpopo, in Jane Fair's help, partnership to build the school toilets, and then we went to the Eastern Cape in two schools, and we helped to build some of those toilets. So I'm saying the schools needs to be fixed, and I just chose a narrow area. But if all of us said, you know what, we're not going to be corrupt, we're not going to tire in highlighting the fact that this inequity just on the sanitation is not sustainable. But equally, we're not going to leave societal role players like business to get away with murder. Say, come on, come help us. It's just one example, Thabo, in zooming on the school infrastructure and sanitation, that something can be done and something ought to be done.
We are dealing today, especially because of the breaking news, with the newly empowered opposition parties, really, within a government. And one of those individuals, a small party, caught in a scandal of fraud, being arrested and so on and so forth, which then brings again the question, the ethical question in our politics, whether it has been prioritized, even with the coming in of the newly empowered opposition parties in what we call a government of national unity, whether we are going to see anything different.
It's sad when one hears that, and it just takes one back into that sea of despair, and it takes a number of people to what I call homelessness of the soul. And now people say, if our political principles do these things with impunity, what's the point? But as a cleric, and I need to emphasize that, as a cleric, I will never give up on giving hope. I'll never give up telling the truth that corruption doesn't pay. Corruption steals from the poorest of the poor. And I hope that the the processes in the country will hold those that have stolen and those that are compromising this government of national unity from doing what I think are the primary things to serve the populace in South Africa, not to line up their politics. And it's time that politicians are also dealt with appropriately, and they are not perceived as beyond the grip of the law, and that they model what we are trying to do to build a country that is ethical, a country that takes values quite seriously, and who's better placed than the church? I know we've got our own dynamics and issues and failures as the church, but that is precisely what we exist for. We don't exist to line up our pockets. We exist to ensure that everyone in South Africa flourishes, and we can only flourish if we also show the truth of those that steal, and demand that the NPA, the police, the correctional service, and the whole justice system does its work.
Yeah. Reflecting on the 3 years, were you critical enough? Did you criticize them strongly enough in public for their failures?
Thabo, one can always do better. When I gave my farewell speech, I reflected on the fact that it was easy during apartheid to stand there and really be critical and criticize. And when those in power are some people that you went to school and university with, and they are your neighbors, and you know them, and you know that they went to the same church with you, and you know their parents, and you think they have learned the ethics and the moral behavior of when they were struggling, and they were talking about flourishing of everybody and sharing the wealth. And now they're in power, and they steal. I mean, it hits you in the head, and you just say, no, that is not true. And I think this person will change tomorrow, and they don't. And it can be very, very depressing. So I haven't done enough of my prophetic ministry, and my prayer is it doesn't end from having been the president of the South African Council of Churches. I came in during a very difficult time. We had to deal with COVID, and one of the COVID-19, one of the things that I'm very proud that the church leaders within the Council of Churches and the interfaith leaders took it quite seriously. We navigated a very difficult time, and we worked with the business, we worked with the health people to ensure that COVID-19 doesn't ravage our members, so that we were able to speak out, particularly to those that stole the PPEs and stole money that was supposed to give people life. We were quite open, but the work doesn't end. A prophet is a prophet until they die. So I mean, it's a commitment I've made to God and to my church, and it's a commitment I will ensure, because I love this country. I don't have any other country, and my prophetic ministry is to ensure that we all flourish, not some who are politically connected or who have inherited resources, but all of us should be invited to the table and benefit.
Looking at international stages now, what threatens the future of the world? And one of the biggest challenges, I suppose, especially for the church, is to be able to strike a balance or get the balance right between the Israel of the Bible that you cannot speak against and the injustices served to the people of Palestine. How do you strike that balance? Especially, I suppose, for the executive that is coming in the South African Council of Churches.
Thabo, in my speech, I did say we have done a number of things, and some things we haven't done. But what gives me greater joy is the fact that the South African Council of Churches was very clear that the Israel of the Bible is not the current state of Israel today. And we are very clear that Christian Zionism sometimes can be used, or in fact is being used to legitimize the current state political Israel, and that could actually be, and that is very misleading. And we condemned in the resolution that we took as the council, we condemned the genocidal effects of the current state of Israel and the killing of the Palestinians, and now the attacks in Jordan, and those are because of the occupation. We equally condemned the attack by Hamas about a year ago. But as people of faith, it is God's children that are dying in the midst of this war, of this pitiless war, and we wanted to go to the roots of yes, there's Hamas, yes, there's Hezbollah, yes, there's the Israel Defense Force, but who's supplying the arms into that very volatile situation? Who benefits from the arms sales? And the arms sales are not bringing stability and peace, and we long for peace with justice. We long for an end to the killings. And we were bold to point out that the big brother, America, who's supplying, and the other countries, but we pointed out America in particular, and we said our brothers and sisters in the churches in the US must not be muted. They must be unmuted in the light of the killings. We may differ ideologically, we may differ theologically, but the sanctity of all God's children on different parts of this war is paramount. That's the balance we're trying to strike. But my predecessor, Desmond Tutu, was much more forthright, and he said, "You can't try to seek balance in a situation of an injustice. You just need to name the evil. You need to name the perpetrator. You need to name the killer." In our resolution, we were short of that robustness and forthrightness of Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Your Grace, we wish you God's blessing as you proceed with your prophetic responsibility as well, and also in the leadership of this nation. We appreciate your time and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, Thabo.
That's the outgoing president of the South African Council of Churches, the Archbishop Dr. Thabo Makgoba. What's making news tonight in Focus when we continue next? Stay with us.